Well, welcome to Hello Chaos, the show where founders, innovators, and chaotic minds get real, get unfiltered about the mess, the magic, and the mayhem of entrepreneurship. Today, we are welcoming Aleksandra Simanovsky. She is the founder of Adige Advisory, and I'm excited to hear about the name. I want you to tell people what the name stands for because I think it's really neat and profound. So, welcome to the show, Aleksandra. I appreciate you being on here.
Hi, Jennifer. Really pleasure. Great connecting with you. And I'm excited to be on and tell you
Yeah.
more. Just to start, Adige is a small river that pierces through the Italian Alps. And that's very much how I identify. It's, small body of water that goes through mountains, pierces through, irrespective of what gets in the way. So that's part of the name. The other part is Adige Asset Advisory. So AAA is the
Okay.
um, shorthand, which is funny because that's the nickname I got when I worked at my prior employer. I was hired to get ratings for
Okay.
a new asset class that hasn't existed before. And for 5 years, I've been called AAA because that was the target. We were going to get AAA ratings.
So did you have to back in and go, what can I do to make AAA? Or did you just come out? Was it a,
That was exactly the thinking. That was it. And then whatever fit that moniker, thank God for ChatGPT. It gave me some really good
give you some
options.
answers? So where are you calling out from?
So I'm based in the Northeast. I'm in New Jersey,
Very good. What part of New Jersey?
Marlboro. So some people call it Central New Jersey.
Yeah. My daughter is in Red Bank.
That's just 20 minutes from
I
us.
know. I was like, I think that's like right around there. I think I've driven through.
Probably. So it's about 20 minutes to the shore, 20
Yeah.
minutes to Red
I
Bank. I
find that,
absolutely
yeah,
love it.
everything, there's all those little towns and it's like 20 minutes, like a 20
Funny you
minute
say
drive.
that. Get that all the time.
So
But how did I get here, right?
yeah, like what inspired you to even start your company in the first place? Like what got you here?
Certainly. So I grew up and started in the world of institutional finance. So I started in early 2000s and grew up in a rating agency. So think big spreadsheets, large names. I started my career at Moody's rating agency. I looked at billion-dollar deals, hundreds of million-dollar deals, and spreadsheets, numbers, presentations, sat across the table from really big names. But it wasn't until 2019 when I started working in private lending or non-bank lending that I really saw people with access to money do incredible things. I started my career in ratings. I did everything from residential mortgage-backed securities. Everybody remember 2008, the big subprime crisis. Lived that, had a front row seat, got to see a big change in the marketplace. After RMBS, residential mortgages, I did student loan financing. And after that, in 2012, I ended up in commercial real estate. So
Wow.
again, huge names. After working at Moody's, I went to a new rating agency, Kroll. I must have been employee number 45 at the time. But it was my first chance to be part of an organization that was really building something that didn't exist before. And that's when I got my first taste of entrepreneurship, where I personally could make an impact. Whereas before I worked for Moody's, it was the big Titanic
Right.
moving at the slowest pace and going into the crisis of 2008, unable to avoid disaster because it was just already on the course.
Yeah.
So 2011 and 12, when I went over to Kroll, it was a brand new organization, none of the legacy. And my opinion actually mattered in a big way, where it built a foundation that the company was building on. It was an incredible feeling. But because of that, I had a chance to go work for Deutsche Bank, another huge name in the commercial real estate means that I worked on deals that really changed the landscape. So Hudson Yards projects, for example, was one of the projects I worked on, or the Kalahari Resort in the Poconos in Ohio. Just really tremendous opportunities, but it really felt so far out of touch. It felt like I can touch it because there was a lot of people with money that could do it, and I was just a cog in a big system, right? So in my private life, my husband and I would buy houses at the time. We actually bought our first personal residence and then an investment property in 2000 with every bonus check I would get from my corporate career. We would buy a house, renovate it, and rent it out. So in my private life, I had a chance of entrepreneurship, but not
Yeah.
in the same way. So 2019, I was approached by a company called Tora Capital that was really revolutionary in the way that it provided the institutional mindset of a big company thinking, but it provided money to non-bank lenders. And at the
Okay.
time, I didn't realize that that market existed. So backtrack to my story of buying houses, renovating them.
Right.
All of that was done with my personal cash.
Wow.
Turns out that there's a big market of private lenders, or some of them call them hard money lenders,
That's what I was
non-bank
saying. It's like, isn't
lenders,
that the hard money lenders? Yeah.
but that has a really negative connotation. These aren't really people that go, knock out your kneecaps. They're Some of them are, just people pooling money together, family offices pooling money together and giving you access like you wouldn't have before. So in 2019, when I joined the Twerk organization, it was an entrepreneurial firm in the sense that they connected with hundreds of these private lenders across the US. They went to them and they said, if you could make loans that somewhat look similar, that have a consistent set of guidelines, consistent set of risks. For example, the borrower needs to have a FICO score of at least 650, or the property value needs to be at least 20% or higher than what we're going to lend you. So similar concept of what Fannie and Freddie Mac has done for the residential market.
Okay.
We will be able to lend you money. Not only will we be able to lend you money, but you're lending your money already. You don't need to wait for that borrower to pay you back. Instead, we're going to buy that loan from you so that you have the money again to lend it again. So what they did is they've aggregated billions in dollars in loans across the US from many different private lenders, with the concept of financing it in the big institutional world. The two things that they achieved since 2019 is they normalized some of the lending patterns. For example, there were lenders in California that were lending without consideration for appraisals.
Right.
At the same time, there were lenders in New York that were lending without the concept of a credit score.
Right.
So they've normalized the process. And
Yeah. Which
with
just
that,
destroyed, melted our, our, our whatever, our infrastructure.
somewhat, it disrupted it, right? So I'll tell you a really great story that
Yeah.
made it really come to life for me. When big organizations, big banks get access to money and they buy houses, think BlackRock, right? They buy a ton of houses because they could afford it. And then they changed the landscape, right? In 2008, when the market failed, people weren't able to buy a lot of these houses. So banks had to come in and rescue them. On the other hand, I met with a single borrower, young guy, maybe in his 20s, that was buying houses in Newark, New Jersey, which is a really, um, how do I say this, blighted area of
Yeah.
New Jersey. Mm, But he single-handedly transformed neighborhoods because he would buy rundown, infested houses that families would not consider living in. He came in with money from private lenders, fixed it up. Not only that, he hired local blue-collar workers, gave them an opportunity to make money, fixed up these houses that now welcomed families. And he did the same thing, 4 or 5 houses on the same block,
Yeah.
which means that those houses are available for families to live in
Right.
and not necessarily be the crack houses they were before he got involved. But that's what private money is able to do, where banks don't have a program that allows people to borrow for a year and then fix it up and then refinance it or sell the
Right.
house.
Like
Instead, he had
neighborhood.
to go.
Yeah. Neighborhood reinvestment, neighborhood kind of
That's
beautification.
exactly right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And you don't have big organization doing it. You have small entrepreneurs, you have small business people with access to that kind of money. Really changed the landscape. So that was an inspirational part of my journey. And I was a Torek from 2019 to 2024.
Okay.
And part of my mission at Torek was to get AAA ratings, the moniker to my company. It was a labor of love. It took 5 years. But what happened is between 2019 and 2024, I worked with rating agencies, one of my former
Right.
people, right? Because I knew their language, I knew what they were looking for. And at the same time, I understood the business. that they didn't at the time. So I bridged the gap. I explained to them, I taught them about this market. And in February of 2024, they rated the first ever deal in the market. So what that did is the deal is a package of loans that are backed by these short-term loans that finance fix and flip properties.
Right.
And so when that was financed for the first time and it was rated, it means that previously when there were maybe 20, 30 investors that would buy unrated bonds, that universe exploded to over 100 because now insurance companies that require ratings could
Okay.
buy these bonds. Money managers, their amount of investors that are now able to access this market and buy these bonds has exploded,
Okay.
which means that ton of institutional capital was flowing in the hands of private lenders, not bank lenders. And to me, it opened up a huge universe that hasn't existed before, which was my career highlight for sure. And I'm absolutely grateful while
Yeah.
I was the Forex to make this happen and make that impact on the industry.
So how has that shaped what you do now in Adige Advisory? Are you in, is that the space that you're in? Is that like a gap that you found that you're like, "Ooh, I can enter here
That is
and
exactly
bring my
right.
skill sets and the gifts that I've, you know, accumulated over the last 2 decades
That's
into it."
exactly it. Because
Okay.
the amount of money flowing into this residential transitional loan or fix and flip space was astronomical. And the private lenders that are not used to dealing with institutional capital providers
Right.
couldn't catch it fast enough.
Okay.
Just to give you an example, so the deal I worked on while I was at Torac would take no more than a month to package the deal and sell it to bond investors. In talking to market participants and talking to the bankers that work on the deals and talking to the lawyers, the counsel and accountants, it took new private lenders or issuers months. 6 months is a number that kept coming up often. And I just thought if I took that long in my job, I mean, my job would be given to a plant.
Right.
Just so much inefficiency, so much excess money and time that was wasted in order to learn the market. Because these private non-bank lenders, they're great at what they do. They're operators, they're entrepreneurs of their own right. But now, overnight, they would have to learn to be capital markets experts, Wall Street experts. And that's not the DNA they come from. But I
Gotcha.
did. So I thought that I could build Adige to be that wedge to that middle expediter
Because I was
that
like, okay,
allows
so
them
you're
to.
kind of that, you come in there and go, yeah, the middleman, like you said, the expediter to, yeah, make it more efficient, faster,
That's exactly right. So I
river,
said
river through the rock.
that's exactly right. That's entirely it.
So you came from like big corporation to then now finding this gap and starting your own business. What did you find like the biggest surprise to you? Whether it's a myth of owning your own business or maybe it was an aha moment. Did you experience any of that?
Absolutely. So I thought I left my corporate world having a ton of confidence. I thought I had a Rolodex that's filled with potential clients. And after the safety net of a corporate job was gone, I realized very quickly that the deals that I expected were not coming in as fast. And it's funny. So I had the confidence thinking they would hire me right away. Meanwhile, the lenders had a lot of confidence thinking they could do it on their own without
Right.
hiring me,
Yeah.
which, that big ego of I can. And granted, a lot of the folks that I thought that would hire me right away still got to the finish line, but it took them over a
It's
year to
until
get there.
people feel that pain, they don't know. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And sometimes they have to feel it over and over and over again to realize that there might be a better way.
Absolutely embraced, let them for the time being. I think
Yeah.
it's a matter of time. But it's funny. So I've actually had to pivot quite a bit
Okay.
because I came out thinking I got this. There's a
Right.
huge demand.
If
There's
I
this.
build it, they'll come. And it's funny, I kind of had that similar when I left a large agency, working on big brand. I thought I see a gap. There's a complete solution. I did, I polled a bunch of chief marketing officers and VPs of marketing. And I was like, if I build a marketing agency and design it this, in this model, oh, yes, like you've hit a sore spot. But it's interesting when you come out on your own, even personal reputation, there becomes ooh, I can't hire you until you're more established because I know you, but your company isn't known. And I can't
That's
go take
exactly
the
right.
risk to my board of advisors or my executive team until you've been in business for 2 or 3 years. And I'm going, but I've worked with you for 2 decades. Yeah. So it was, the whole building of trust and credibility beyond my name and my I had to like build the brand of the company and the collection of the team, the expertise to build that credibility and trust to get in the door. And so, but yeah, that was a big kind of, that was a surprise to me
Yeah,
of,
Jennifer,
uh,
I'm entirely aligned with you. I know exactly where you come from because I'm used to coming from the corporate world. It was enough for me to just call and say,
right,
I'm calling from Deutsche Bank.
right,
Doors open.
right,
I have an army behind me. I'm calling and things just get done. And
right,
now it's just me. So I definitely had to learn to be a lot more patient. Each of those conversations take longer
right.
than they would had I been established.
That's
But I'll
right.
tell you at the same time, the network I've built before I came out on my own was incredibly instrumental. In
Uh,
fact, I kind of kick myself for not taking advantage of that in a bigger way,
how is
almost to
that?
the
Like,
fact,
when you talk about what would you have done?
definitely. So, being in a corporate world, you go to conferences, for example, you represent the company. Speaking to any other people, you are the company, you're not an individual.
Right.
At the same time, you're still building relationships. But it's very hard to distinguish your identity from the company that you
Uh,
work for,
yeah.
especially if you're working there for a long time. At the same time, I really wish that I built rapport on my own as opposed to, having both the company
Yeah.
and myself in mind, right? So building a reputation, building a brand, not only for the organization, but also for myself.
But your own, what we call like an executive style guide, your own personal brand is
Right.
so important. That was a lessons learned for me too. Of I was so comfortable under, I think I had more confidence and more courage when you're representing another brand out there networking and all that. And it was such a weird vulnerability, I don't know, lack of confidence, whether it's called, imposter syndrome. When I came out on my own, I took me a couple years like, why am I so shy and not as confident? And I'm feeling like I feel like I can't be bold like I was, in years past. And it's been a aha for me over the last like 4 or 5 years of I had to really what I call, we build brands for, and build brand guidelines for companies. I started doing it for myself as like, here's an executive style guide, your personal style guide, and doing it for the executives that we work with because I started
That's
to notice
tremendous.
the same thing you did of you could see people going, I have so much more to offer. How do I show up more authentically and confidently in my office work environment and the corporate environment so I get seen and noticed and promoted? Or if I leave, how do I then show up and be able to stand more firmly in my own self?
Oh, I would love an access to that because that sounds tremendous and would have been really helpful. It just one of those things that you pick up as you go, and
Yeah,
if there's a shortcut, embrace it
that's right.
wholeheartedly.
Like shout out to but it's like those were little mini ahas that yeah, it was took over a decade for
Well,
me to like wake up and go kind of. And we started, when you kind of realize it for yourself, like you're kind of going through, you start recognizing it in other people. Like we would sit with founders and you would hear like the founders feeling lost of after we developed the brand and they're like,
mhm,
well, wait a minute, that's now how do I show up differently than just the brand? And
interesting. Full circle.
yeah, and it's like, okay, well, the brand is this is their voice and tone. it represents a much bigger collection of feelings and emotions and experiences that you want people to relate to and connect with, but you're not the brand. You might have built it, you've influenced it, and you help lead in that culture, build that culture, lead that culture. But you're also very, at some point you need to kind of go in parallel
That makes
lines. But
sense.
how does
I
that,
see that.
how does that work? What is that voice? Where does it show up in aligned, and where is it not aligned? Yeah. So we've helped founders even help uh push, especially in new categories. Like if you're in a business where you founded something and it's like you're shaking up the category, you might need the founder's voice to be that rogue pushing and having it be authentically loud
Yeah, no,
and kind of disruptor. But then the brand itself, the company brand, maybe can't. Maybe it's got to be more conservative, play it safe,
interesting.
but let the founder lead it so that it paves the way for the company to kind of set into. So, we've seen it, but
Interesting.
I don't think I would have identified it if I hadn't gone through that same pain
That
myself.
makes sense. That makes sense. But I'll tell you, so, being confident coming out, thinking I would have all these clients to help navigate this
Yeah.
new world that didn't exist before, I've learned to pivot as well. So using the network, at least the connections that I've built have been incredibly helpful in bridging the gap and helping me connect with other organizations because being in the industry, I've seen it from a perspective that not many, for example, not bank lenders might have seen it. So interestingly enough, I've partnered with a technology provider and have through access to their data, have created a dashboard of analytics that is now helpful and useful to not only the non-bank lenders, but also the capital markets that's putting money into the space, meaning the new money, the new investors into this short-term market and real estate, short-term financing market and real estate, they're interested in knowing how, for example, a loan in California will perform relative to a loan in New York. And so having partnered with a technology provider that, by the way, has had decades of experience in the space, is really knowledgeable in the specific sector,
Right.
having access to their technology, their information, and making that available to the capital providers has broadened my network, which is wonderful that I didn't see initially.
Yeah.
Another one is this new AI innovation, for example.
Yeah.
I've partnered as an ambassador to a company that's creating AI agents. And this is really cool. This is
Yeah.
basically, everybody's embraced ChatGPT, which is a computer communicator.
Right.
And this is a company that offers a human interaction, a voice that's generated by a computer, which you would never be able to tell or very hard to tell, that basically talks to you in any accent you want. So, for example, a lot of people that make loans and a lot of private lenders that make loans,
Right.
they hire offshore employees to collect information. So, if you've ever gotten a mortgage, for example, you're being told to give in your driver's license, your ID,
Right.
or bank information, your budget for how you're going to renovate the house. And then you have people chasing down this information. And, there's sometimes a language barrier, there's sometimes an educational barrier if they're working offshore.
Right.
AI doesn't have the same hurdles. AI can have more friendly access. For example, if you're out of Texas, you could have a
Oh, so it like
approachable.
molds based on the region?
It does. And not only
My
that,
gosh.
similar to talking to ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever AI tool people are
Right.
using, it gives you human responses that kind of parses through. So, as an example, there was one that was chasing down a budget for a rehabilitation of a house, a renovation of a house. And I told the computer, I said, well, I don't even know what a budget is or what it's supposed to look like.
Right.
So then the computer told me that this is something you get from your general contractor, and here's the different sections it usually has, and here's, for example, a cost for windows. And it just gives you so much more than any human that you could have hired would have done it, which is tremendous because as private lenders grow, as they now have money coming in from institutional space, and they're now accessing more and looking for ways to be more efficient, this
Yeah.
is a way for them to scale without having to
Like
hire people,
ha-
without having to throw money at the problem, and just
right.
scaling with technology. So that's given me access to, again, incredible opportunities that I
Right.
wouldn't have otherwise.
That's fantastic. Yeah, because we work with different financial institutions, and uh, there are some that are very obviously AI
Hmm.
and bot, and which disrupts, makes people not trust. They back away, they get fearful. But that's interesting if the technology is advancing so it feels more human.
Well, I'll tell you, I certainly see the approach of human touch and specialization,
Yeah,
especially as you're putting big money on the line, millions of dollars, you don't want it to
right,
be automated. At the same time, there are low-hanging fruit that you don't necessarily need to have a touch point.
right,
Similar to In-N-Out Burger, right? So In-N-Out versus McDonald's, right? In-N-Out is very personable. It's still old technology, but they do have cashless registers. They
right.
still embraced a component that's electronic. So what I mean is there's a market for both in this space. And to the extent people, you have two similar companies that embrace technology and one does not, I think it becomes a real distinguishing factor in companies that are growing.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. So, in this process of your journey, what have you really learned more about yourself, or what has surprised you about yourself?
The ability to be more patient. Having worked in large organizations with armies behind me,
Yeah.
things are done. Things are done. Right now, it's entirely in my shoulders, on my head. It's I have get to wear all the hats. So I have learned to be more patient,
Giving yourself more grace.
giving myself more grace, and even though I came into this, and I've only started the company in October, so we're just approaching the
Wow,
one
you're
year
almost like a
mark.
1 year.
That's
That's
right.
fantastic.
That's
Yeah.
right. But I have to say that I've been incredibly blessed with the people that have been around me with my network because without actual advertising, it's really the connections where I meet one person and they introduce me to another person,
That's
and that
right.
leads to three more relationships. And that's been the most rewarding part of this all.
I was
It's
going to
funny.
ask
So
you, yeah, what's is that the biggest reward? Is the people?
it absolutely is. It's really, at the end of the day, the money will come
Hmm.
with all of these factors, but that rewarding opportunity to help something, to have an impact on something is incredible. And that's exactly the feeling that I chase. And so, just one small component. So, I met a woman in private lending, and now this is a world that is 80% dominated by men, which is the world, the fish tank I've learned to swim in. But meeting this one woman and joining an organization called Women in Private Lending has been a tremendous platform that gives me a voice without having a platform of a company that existed for decades.
Yeah.
And through that, I've been able to reach companies, have a voice on panels, have a group that is just has my best intentions in mind
Right.
without having to have a corporate structure,
Hmm.
which has been incredible. And that's just one
But
connection that led to so many.
yeah, it is. It's right. We have to build our own kind of community, our own circle of support when we're
Absolutely.
like, can't stress that enough. Like, find a community, find your people, get your cheerleaders.
That's right.
Who
That's
is
right.
your biggest cheerleader?
To be honest, it's actually initially been the company that I worked for,
Really?
which is not
That
something
is
I expected at
oh,
all.
that's so great.
So being part of that company, I've really transformed the industry. Having that institutional recognition of a space that wasn't there before
Yeah.
has really done tremendous things for the company. And like any organization, a lot of them take it as their win, but I really had an opportunity to be put on a platform along with them of this one. So just to give an example, in April, the company won an award. It's funny, it's sort of like the Grammys in structured finance world. It's held in the city in a marble-filled room.
Everyone wears black tie.
Exactly. It's, a couple of $1,000s per plate. It's really fantastic. And even though I was no longer part of the organization, having been welcomed and been asked to join them as a guest, having the opportunity to join them on stage has been an incredible platform, and I couldn't be more grateful.
That's a great story because that doesn't happen.
It doesn't, and
Like,
that is exactly why
what a
knowing and
win.
having a frame of reference is so helpful.
Yeah. Um, So what would listeners be if it's not on your resume, it's not LinkedIn or anything, but is there something that would surprise or people would find really interesting about you that again that's not on your professional bio?
So funny enough, I'm an adrenaline junkie. I kind of chase that fast-paced world, which is funny. So Hello
Are you a
Chaos is
plane jumper?
yes, that's exactly where I was going. So nobody probably guesses it, but my husband and I just ever since we've been together have done things like
Yeah, tell me the list.
paragliding and yeah, jumping out of an airplane and flying helicopters, small
Wow.
planes. It's just been, I always chase that rush, which is probably why I've been seeking this entrepreneurship journey because it is so adrenaline inducing when it works. And it's just such an incredible
It
kind
is
of
like
feeling.
jumping out of a plane. That's
That's
what it feels
exactly
like
right.
when you start a business.
That is exactly right. And, letting go of that parachute and just figuring out what happens. And it's funny. So I've learned to be more patient. And while I've had to pivot around while partnering with industry leaders, I've
Right.
also been able to commit and really help organizations. So achieving what I've actually set out to do. So it's interesting. So the companies that I have partnered with have been able to get to a finish line within 2 months, as opposed to the 6 months that I've heard others
Yeah.
navigated through. At the same time, they've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars because of access to the network that I've had
Wow.
building since the time I've joined. So
Write
it's,
those case studies down. Write them down. Share them.
you're absolutely right. I should.
So, what's the best piece of advice that you've received or that you've taken to heart and or maybe it's advice that you would give because it's lessons learned from you that you would give to other founders?
Sure. So it's interesting. So my husband is an entrepreneur. He owns a Italian restaurant. And when I went into this thinking I would just achieve it day one, he just said, make a list because you have one conversation and it seems like it's going to go so far. And they tend to fizzle unless you are the cheerleader and you follow through on the
Yeah,
promises, right? A lot of people don't necessarily have your interest in mind, and you have to focus on the fact that it's you driving your success.
right.
So he suggested track each conversation, revisit it on a monthly basis just to see where each of those conversations have gone.
Yeah,
Because unless you're the one that's pushing and cheerleading each of those efforts, it cannot come from the other end. It cannot come from
right.
a team. It's entirely you. So that's really helped and
That is
really
such a good lesson. I think we all need to that we think after the initial conversation, the meeting, someone's like, yeah, 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 and then you'll send a follow up, and then you're like, okay, well, I haven't heard back from them. I think we forget that we other people get busy. We become less top of mind. So how do we keep doing those reminders, whether it's
exactly.
weekly or monthly? Because you're right, you know you have to be your own cheerleader and your
That's
own
right.
navigator.
That's right.
Of those. So, if you had to sum up your journey in just one word, what word would you use?
It's purpose. It's
Purpose.
purpose.
Okay.
It's really given me purpose because I'm no longer serving a bigger organization. It's really my internal purpose that drives me. So it's certainly for
It's bringing
purpose.
you joy.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So, if you have to look to the next chapter, you're year 1. What's the next chapter in your journey? What word defines that? Or what word do you want to define
Impactful.
that?
Impactful.
Impactful. Okay. All
I
right.
want to make a difference and we're all put on this earth to do something. So I definitely want to have an impact.
That's right. Use our gifts for purpose.
That's right.
So if we meet a year from now, next October, September, October, you're at 1 year. What other than being 2 years, what will we be celebrating? What win would we be celebrating in a year?
I'd say it's growth for my partners. It's growth alongside my partners. Their success is my success. My incredible network and the ability to help the private lending space that's so fragmented. A lot of these family offices, for example, are isolated on an island. While they're successful on their own, having
Yeah,
access to the network that I could build just makes everybody that much better. So I think celebrating the success of my partners would be where I'd be in two
let's do
years.
it. Let's do it. We're manifesting that right now.
Love it. Yes. Embracing it.
I love oh the Alexander, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us your story. And I appreciate you chatting with us. Before we go,
Awesome.
where can people get a hold of you, connect with you, support what you're doing? Give them all your stuff.
Sure. So the best way to reach me is by email. It's Alexandra at adigeadvisory.com, which is linked to the site
That's
here.
right. We will
The
link it
other
all.
place to find me, thank you. And the other place to find me is LinkedIn. Pretty active, have a tremendous community, really grateful to them. And it's Aleksandra Simanovsky and love to connect and give back.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, we will share this wonderful episode and your story. But that's a wrap on today's chaos. The journey doesn't stop here, though. If you did find yourself nodding along or maybe want to get to know Alexandra and what she's doing and how her community can support what you're doing, make sure to subscribe, share, and give us a 5-star review on Spotify. Or you can dig deeper into founder resources or tools and more episodes over at orangewip.com. That is orangewip.com. That WIP is for work in progress because that's what we all are. Until next time, stay curious and stay scrappy, and we will see you again next week.